Who are the next great rock and roll revolutionaries? 50 years ago, The Clash laid down the blueprint, and today I'm looking at a new essential book that takes us back inside the Clash's mission, their music, and mythology. There are very few bands that seem to arrive with a mission. The Clash were definitely one of them. Welcome into the Rock Talk Studio, the rock history and culture podcast that brings you all the new essential books, docs, stories, and products that matter. The Clash just felt like a band with a purpose. They had politics, they had so much style, ambition, they could channel their energy, they had contradictions in their music and their approach, and maybe most importantly, they had this belief that rock and roll could still matter, and not just as entertainment, but as a force. Joe Strummer had a famous quote that he would always say about the Clash, that they were anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-violent, and anti-ignorance. And that is a lot to carry for a band, but the Clash carried it like a banner. Even when they were stumbling under the weight of it, they still were able to carry it. And that's what makes this new book by Pat Gilbert called Passion is a Fashion, The Real Story of the Clash, such an essential read. If you want to learn about this band and a pivotal time in rock and roll history, this book is it. It is a reissue that's coming out, a revised and updated 50th anniversary issue to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Clash. The original book came out in 2004. Gilbert is a former Mojo editor, and he conducted over 70 exclusive interviews for this book. He tracked down all the band members who are still alive, insiders, roadies, producers, managers, friends, scene figures, and people who rarely speak publicly about the Clash. He made a point of saying that, this was a very tight unit, that a lot of people don't and didn't speak about the Clash up until then. And that alone to me is really impressive. But the real achievement is what he does with all these voices, because the Clash were not a neat band in any way. This is not a clean story. There were not four guys moving in a straight line from punk rebellion to rock and roll greatness here. There was chaos, and there was a lot of chaos. And one of the things that really stood out to me while reading the book is how much the Clash seemed to really need chaos. There were times there almost seemed to seek it out. If they were bored when the band was struggling and they were just not getting along or having a good time, to be productive, they had to have madness around them. They seeked it out. They were always looking for a different way, a different approach, a different area to record in. This is such a revealing detail to me here, because it explains so much about the band and what they stood for and how they got their sound. And author Pat Gilbert seemed really determined to chase down just every person, place, argument, studio session, scene, and historical thread that might help explain how the Clash became the Clash. And the amount of research here is enormous. It feels like he absorbed every book, every interview, documentary, concert account, and stray pieces about the Clash, then stitched them all together into one massive living narrative. There's a lot of really great reference to Clash books and films in here also. And for the most part, I think he really did pull it off. Sometimes the level of detail is thrilling, and sometimes it's not. I would have to say this is not a breezy book. I didn't fly through it. It is dense. It is packed, and at times it can feel like information overload. But honestly, with a band like this and a story like this, it almost feels right. The Clash's story was noisy, and it's layered, it's political, it's emotional, it's overstuffed with a lot of different meanings, and a lighter version of this book probably would not have captured them as well. So I think the direction and the way it was written it really worked. The book is bombastic because the band was bombastic. And once I kind of accepted that as I was going along, the density became part of the experience. What I also really appreciated is that Gilbert didn't limit the story to obvious figures. Yes, Strummer and Jones and Simonon and Topper are all central to the book, but the book also makes a lot of room for people kind of orbiting around them that really contributed to the band and the story. Terry Chimes, Keith Levine, Don Letts, Cosmo Vinyl. There's producers, there's crew members mentioned in here. And the larger punk scene in general really helped shape this band's identity and really helped shape this book. And then there is Bernie Rhodes. Bernie Rhodes is their famous manager, and he comes across as much more than a manager in this book. I mean, he shaped this band's direction in a lot of ways, their image, their confrontational spirit, and kind of their sense of purpose. He also represented a lot about the UK punk scene itself, and Gilbert gives a lot of play to Rhodes, and it's not always a sympathetic one, but it's definitely an essential one, and you get that throughout the book, and that is another of this book's real great strengths is it doesn't seem interested in making everyone look good. The author clearly respects the Clash, but he doesn't write like someone trying to protect them. There's admiration here, but definitely not blind worship. He lets the band be brilliant, difficult, visionary, frustrating, and occasionally self-destructive. It shows the contradictions behind the mission, and it shows the people behind the legend, and it shows why the Clash were just different. The Clash were definitely more than just a punk band, which they kind of grew out of. There was a larger collision happening in England, and this book does a great job of exploring a lot of issues of class, of race, politics, fashion, youth culture, media, and all the anger that the band was challenging. The Clash were messy. They were idealistic, but they were flawed, they were explosive, and ambitious enough to believe that a band could take on the world. And for a while, they almost did. So no, this book, Passion is a Fashion, is probably not the easiest starting point if you want a light introduction to the Clash. But if you want the big story, the layered story, the complicated story, and one that tries to separate fact from legend while still respecting the legend, this is definitely the book. Passion is a Fashion, to me, is hands down the best book I've ever read about the Clash. Great to see the band getting this type of treatment for the 50th anniversary. This is a good one. Don't miss it. If you want more rock and roll history and culture stories like this, make sure you subscribe. Every week I bring a new discussion about the books and the docs and the stories and the products that matter. Coming up in the next few weeks, I've got a great Soundgarden conversation. Kim Thayil from Soundgarden, the lead guitarist, just put out a new book, his memoir. I'm going to be going all through that. Also going to get a look in at the Rush tour that just kicked off with new drummer Annika Nils. Really excited to talk about that and discuss kind of the new sound, the next chapter of Rush. And I might even get a chance to see that new documentary that's coming out, the new Gregg Allman documentary. Can't wait to talk all about that one in the next few weeks. All right, let's tear it down, pack it up, and head on down the road for this week. I'll catch you next time in the Rock Talk studio.